How central banks quietly took over the world's wealth, the hidden power nobody voted for. What if I told you that the greatest transfer of wealth in human history didn't happen through war or conquest, or revolution, but through quiet meetings, behind closed doors, in rooms filled not with soldiers, but with bankers? No elections, no ballots. And yet, these institutions now decide the fate of nations, how much your money is worth, how much debt you owe, and even whether economies live or die. They are called central banks. But here's the real mystery: how did organizations that were meant to serve economies end up controlling them? And how, without most people noticing, did they quietly take over the world's wealth? Stay with me. Because once you see the system for what it truly is, you'll never look at money the same way again. Section 1. The Origins. How the game began. To understand how central banks rose to power, we have to go back centuries before the Federal Reserve, before the IMF, before the Euro. The year is 1694. England is recovering from a costly war with France. The king is broke. The nation's treasury is empty. So a group of wealthy merchants propose a deal. They'll lend the crown money at interest if they're allowed to create a new institution to manage it. That deal gives birth to the Bank of England, the world's first modern central bank. It was a simple idea with a dangerous twist. Private individuals would lend money to governments, and in return control the nation's money supply. This model spreads like wildfire. France, Sweden, and later the United States all follow similar paths. But what none of them realize yet is that once money is born as debt, it can never truly be free. Because whoever controls the creation of debt controls everything built on top of it. Section 2. The Rise. Creating money from nothing. Fast forward to 1913. A secret meeting takes place on Jekyll Island, off the coast of Georgia. 7 men representing a quarter of the world's wealth gather to design a new financial system for America. The outcome of that meeting becomes the Federal Reserve System. Publicly, it's sold as a way to stabilize the economy. Privately, it gives a small group of unelected bankers the power to create money out of thin air. Here's how it works. When the government needs money, it doesn't print it. It borrows it from the central bank. The bank creates new money by typing numbers into a computer and charges interest on it. That interest is paid by taxpayers. And just like that, every dollar in existence now represents someone's debt. The system is brilliant because it looks like prosperity while quietly enslaving the world in compounding interest. Section 3. The Breaking Point. The Gold Lie. For decades, gold served as a limit leash on how much money could be printed. You could only print as many dollars as you had gold to back them. But in 1971, that leash was cut. President Richard Nixon announced that the U.S. would no longer convert dollars into gold. Overnight, the world entered a new era, the age of fiat currency. Now, money wasn't backed by anything real, just government promises. And with that single decision, the game changed forever. Central banks could create unlimited money. Governments could borrow without restraint. And inflation, quiet, invisible, relentless, became the new tax on every citizen. It was the perfect con. Your savings lost value, your wages stagnated, but asset prices, stocks, real estate, corporate profits soared. And who owned most of those assets? The same elite institutions closest to the source of newly created money. Section 4. The Fallout. Wealth without work. Let's connect the dots. When central banks print money, it doesn't flow evenly. It goes first to banks, corporations, and investors through loans and asset purchases. By the time it trickles down to ordinary people, prices have already risen. This is called the Cantillon effect, named after the 18th century economist who noticed that the timing of new money distribution determines who gets richer and who gets poorer. So every new dollar printed doesn't just expand the economy, it reshapes it, concentrating wealth at the top. Look around. In 1980, the top 1% controlled about 22% of U.S. wealth. By 2024, that number had climbed to over 32%. Meanwhile, more than half of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck. Central banks didn't just stabilize economies, they re-engineered society itself. Section 5. Failed Fixes and Modern Parallels. After every crisis, the Great Depression, the 2008 crash, the COVID meltdown, the answer has always been the same. Print more money. Each time, the solution deepens the problem. In 2008, the Federal Reserve launched quantitative easing, buying trillions in government and corporate bonds. The result? Asset prices exploded. Billionaires doubled their wealth. Housing became unaffordable for an entire generation. And yet the public was told this was stimulus. In 2020, during the pandemic, central banks printed more money in 12 months than in the previous century combined. The result was the highest inflation in 40 years, while the world's 500 richest people added over $5 trillion to their net worth. And now a new chapter is unfolding: central bank digital currencies. They promise convenience, instant payments, no cash. But think carefully: if every transaction is digital and controlled by a central bank, what happens to privacy, to freedom, to dissent? For the first time in history, money could be programmable, able to expire, be restricted, or even turned off with a keystroke. The same institutions that engineered debt now have the tools to engineer behavior. Section 6. The system exposed. The real cost of control. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Central banks don't just control the economy. They control the illusion of stability. They can raise interest rates and trigger recessions. They can lower them and inflate bubbles. They can decide who gets bailed out and who gets left behind. And when those decisions go wrong, the cost doesn't fall on them. It falls on you. On your rent, your mortgage, your groceries, your future. Money, as we know it, is no longer a tool of exchange. It's a tool of control. Section 7. 3 takeaways and a warning. Takeaway 1. Money is not wealth. True wealth lies in what money can't be printed: your skills, your time, your freedom to choose. Takeaway 2. Debt is the invisible chain of modern slavery. The system thrives when you borrow, not when you save. Every swipe of a credit card feeds the empire. Takeaway 3. Inflation is not an accident, it's a design. It quietly moves wealth from the public to those closest to the printing press. But the biggest warning is this: a society that outsources its money to unelected bankers eventually outsources its freedom too. So the next time you hear about interest rate hikes, stimulus packages, or digital currencies, don't just think of economics. Think of power, because this isn't just a financial story. It's the story of how control moved from parliaments to central banks, and from citizens to creditors. If you found this video eye-opening, don't let it end here. Share it. Discuss it. Question it. Because awareness is the first step toward reclaiming freedom. This was the hidden history of how central banks took over the world's wealth. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake, and never stop asking who really profits when money moves. Subscribe next: The Hidden Empire of Debt.